Hi and welcome to Kegels and Coffee. My name is Isabel and I'm your host. Susan and I go way back to my California days. She danced for my company in 2009 and has been a close friend ever since. Susan grew up in suburban New York. After completing her master's degree in health science, she became a physician assistant and made her way to the West Coast, where she felt more at home in the outdoor world. But this conversation is not about climbing or skiing, rather working less and sleeping more. Both of us struggle with sleep, and we've had so many conversations about it. The mattresses we try, the blankets we buy, the edibles we get. It's a constant thing, and luckily we crack each other up over how ridiculous it can be just to try and get one good night's sleep. In our conversation, Susan shares some insights into sleep hygiene, the circadian rhythm, and how, as a child, she was absolutely terrified of aliens grabbing her feet from underneath a bed. We also talk about how our bodies will stop us when we don't slow down, and ironically, when we recorded this episode, Susan had just thrown her back out after going full force for too long. Lastly, a fun little update. In this interview, she mentions yearning for something new and different in her work life. And today, as I publish this piece, Susan is actually no longer working her 40-hour-a-week job and for the first time is giving herself a break, which I'm so excited about. In her own words, there's got to be more to life than this. I feel like I'm in a bit of a hamster wheel.
No, seriously, what am I doing with my life?
How did that come across? Did they hear me?
I feel like I'm losing my fucking mind.
You're messed up.
I need to just Netflix and chill.
Like I'm gonna meditate like a badass.
It's just like this psychotic break, and then I get my period, and I'm like, oh, it was just your period again.
Am I the only one feeling this crazy? First of all, I think it's hilarious. I finally have forced you to talk about a radio station.
Yeah. Totally your radio station. What is this, the fucking 80s?
Yeah, of course. When it's you and me, it's always the 80s.
The radio station. Tune into Kegels and Coffee.
Oh my God. Okay, then we need to actually talk about how that name came about. Because that's a good story. And also because this was 10 years ago.
Yeah, you're going to have to remind me of that because I'm kind of geriatric in that department.
Oh my God. It was so good. So Kegels and Coffee. So we were bouldering at this spot in Boulder.
With Sandy.
Yes. And Shane, I think, was there maybe. We were definitely drinking coffee and bouldering and talking loudly about all the personal things.
Yeah. And then what happened?
So then I asked somebody in the group a question about sex after birth, and because I was curious, I'd heard a lot of things about that.
Oh, and Sandy was like Kegels or something like that, and you were like,
it's all about
you didn't even know what a
Kegels.
fucking Kegel was at the time, right? You were like, what?
Well, that's what I asked her. I'm like, what's a Kegel? And she's like, are you kidding me? I'm doing them right now.
That's right. I remember that. Oh my God, that was funny. Yeah.
So then I said, guys, we really need to have a radio station, totally 80s. Because
podcasts weren't a thing at that point.
It wasn't even a thing at that point. This is how old we are, dude.
Oh my God. That's good.
So I was like, we have to have a morning radio station somewhere in Denver. And
we'll call it Kegels and Coffee.
Well, that was your comment.
Yeah.
And you're like, we'll call it Kegels and Coffee. And I wrote it down in my diary that day. That was 10 years ago.
Well, here we are. Kegels and Coffee. Alive and thriving.
Well, I don't know about the thriving, but it's happening.
Hey, whatever. You gotta start somewhere, you know?
You gotta start somewhere. I know. Thank God podcasts started becoming a thing, because then that was my way to not have to contact these radio stations in Denver.
There you go.
Remember how we were cracking each other up one day and then I said, we have to call LA?
That's right. Call LA. We're like, this is too funny. Someone needs to know about this. Let's call LA.
Not even Hollywood. I'm such a German.
No,
just LA.
I mean, where is Hollywood? That's in LA somewhere, right?
It's definitely part of LA.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I've known you for 16 years or something. Jesus. I was making some math.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that a difficult thing to do to make the math?
I counted it on my hands.
Holy shit, has it been that long?
I know. I was
Wow.
thinking, I was getting ready for this, episode, and I was thinking about it and thinking how, like, every time we have a conversation, I walk away feeling so inspired and so just more clear on things. I often have the sensation of I'm not alone. And yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for uplifting me every time we have a conversation. And now for 16 years.
Oh,
This is crazy.
that's an honor to hear that. Thanks.
So one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot over the years is sleep and the lack of sleep and how important sleep is and how hard it is to come by sometimes, often, because of outside noise or noise in our heads. It's actually funny because you and I had talked about, this conversation and this topic. And 2 nights later, I had finally, it was one of those nights where I went to bed early. I knew I was going to sleep well. Like I just had that sensation. My body was heavy. My muscles were so relaxed and so tired. And I passed out at 10 or something. And I think it was 1 a.m., which is never my witching hour. My witching hour is usually 4-ish or something like this.
Yes, 3 for me.
3 or 4. But at 1 o'clock, this huge thunder happened. I actually don't know that it was thunder. It was just really loud. And I thought, because we're living in this little studio above a garage, that the motor bike had fallen over or something, because even Pata woke up. It was just really loud to the point where it sent adrenaline through my body. And I was upright and I could not fall back asleep. And all I could think about for the next hours, if that noise hadn't happened, I would still be sleeping like a freaking baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that thought rushes through your body and you're just going and going and going instead of trying to just calm yourself down. But you're I can get back to that state, and you're imagining these adrenaline particles just
You're imagining adrenaline particles at 4 a.m.? Because that's not what I'm imagining.
Oh
Usually it's more like Vecna from Stranger Things or something, some creepy monster that I'm imagining. Sleep has been a problem for me ever since I was a little kid, ever since I was a little girl.
Oh, wow. I don't think I knew that part.
Yeah, I would, I remember sleeping with the TV on. I would sleep with the radio on. I was terrified of bugs in my room. If I saw one bug in one corner of my room, I would freak out. I was terrified of aliens abducting me through my window. I mean,
you're kidding.
No, all these nighttime terrors started when I was a kid, and I still have a fear of the dark, and I probably should go to therapy for it or something, but
not like we have enough on our plate.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I struggle with darkness, and I do and I don't. Now I need to sleep in darkness because I've worked through all the sleep hygiene stuff, but I used to go into my parents' room when I was a kid and go over to my dad and lean over and be like, "Daddy," and then he'd jump 3 feet out of the air in his bed, and then his insomnia was initiated. So, and then he would come in my room and lay in the bed with me until I fell back asleep.
Wow.
I mean, that was when I was younger. Then I was a little bit older. It was I just, turn the TV on and put MTV on, and just let it play.
Was that in college?
That was in high school.
Okay. So in high school, MTV, and then do you remember a time in your life where it wasn't so hard to sleep?
No.
I love how your eyes were
Crickets.
just looking. Crickets. Yeah. Oh my God, crickets.
No, having a full night of sleep is such a rare occurrence that when it happens, I'm like, oh my God, I just slept through the night. It's amazing. It's probably happens 10 times a year.
Wow.
And I'm a really, really sensitive sleeper, really sensitive. And I think that's becoming more so as I age, as the change comes upon us.
It's like never ending, the change.
The change,
Like
yeah.
the first, I'm still in this phase of like the PMS is just getting stronger and
Yes.
stronger and stronger, and I'm losing my goddamn mind. And then, gratefully we get to like transition into this other change.
Yeah. It starts off when you go through puberty and you're like, oh, this is really fucking awesome. Like, what the hell is going on? And then you're an adolescent. And then you don't know what's going on. And then you're in your 20s, you think you have it figured out and you totally don't have it figured out, And then you get to your 30s and you're like, oh yeah, like I am totally like there. And then finally you get to your 40s and you're like, what the fuck was I doing for the first half of my life?
So
And now you're in your
true.
40s and you're like, oh, here comes menopause. Yay.
Oh my gosh, I don't even want to think about that right now. I'm struggling so hard with PMS, and I actually that's one of the worst symptoms for me is that I can't sleep.
Yeah, me too.
I just literally, for me, it's clockwork. Now it's clockwork, and I'm 41 and I get my period very regularly and strong but short. But then I can literally look on my period calendar on my app, and I would say 4 days before my period, I just know I'm going to sleep like shit.
Yeah,
I just
same.
know it.
Same.
I'm just basically not going to sleep. It feels like I'm awake and like it feels like I'm asleep, but I'm rolling around and I'm kind of like
agitated. Yep.
And like and then again, I'm imagining those hormones running through my body, just like fucking everything up,
Yeah.
And literally the moment I get my period, like the next day or the next day, I have my first, better night of sleep.
Yeah. No, it's the same exact thing for me. I mean, I have that first week and I'm just like, I look at the period calendar and I'm like, all right, that's the week I'm not sleeping. Great. And I do feel like I've really worked on the sleep hygiene super hard.
Yeah, tell me more about that. I thought that was super interesting because we've had so many, conversations about it. And I obviously always come to you with my medical questions about whether it's like, herbal or natural remedies or prescription medicine or like other methods, because you have a medical background. So when you talked about the sleep hygiene, I'd never actually heard about it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I guess as of late, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about sleep, just trying to help myself, right? But the general rule of thumb is that there's certain things that we need for sleep, and they can be broken down into categories. And I get a lot of this from the Huberman podcast. This is Andrew Huberman. He's based out of Stanford, and he does some really awesome podcasts. He's a neurobiologist or neuroscientist. And I just listened to a podcast earlier this week, and he was talking about, all the things that I'm already trying to do, still doing them, and it's not working entirely, but it's definitely better. And one of them is light. So our eyes are super sensitive to light. Our hormones, like our cortisol level, like all these things that control our circadian rhythms, so the rhythms that we have for like waking and sleeping, are controlled by light. So actually one of the best things you can do to help set your sleep rhythm is to wake up in the morning and go look at the sun, or like get natural sunlight, which is like, what a concept.
Yeah,
like,
I know. It's so simple, so basic, and so obvious. It would seem like.
Yes. So the first thing you do in the morning is you wake up and you go look at sun, or you look at sunlight, or you look at cloud, like any sort of light. I mean, and if you don't have sunlight, you don't have access to it, you can use artificial light. Not the perfect thing, but it's better. It's better than nothing, right? And so you want to go and expose yourself to that early morning light, because that starts all your body systems going. And I wouldn't be able to rattle off all the hormones that Andrew Huberman can, but whatever. The basic concept is go out and look at the sun. Go out and like see the sun rise. And if you're you wake up later, just get outside. Essentially.
That's actually, I just want to make this quick comment. Another book that I'd read had talked about first thing in the morning, go outside to take a walk, to be outside. Not necessarily the sunlight, but just to be in nature. And that also is kind of a thing that kind of gets your senses going, because you're actually in your natural environment that you're supposed to be in.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? It's like, oh, hey, you want to sleep better? We'll act like a normal human and like go outside.
Like,
it's
crazy. Some goddamn oxygen.
Where are we in society that we have to remind people to wake up and go outside? Like,
I know.
It's crazy. And I know some people live in cities and like it's just not an option.
Right.
I mean, we're privileged. We're in like Boulder, and first world problems, I suppose, but everybody struggles with insomnia, and it's such a simple thing. It doesn't cost any money, right? So light is a thing that's really important in sleep. Number one, waking up in the morning and going out and exposing yourself to daylight, whatever type of daylight that is. Even if it's cloudy out, it's good to be outside. Windows don't help as much because usually windows will filter out that light, and you want to get kind of like all the different like UVA and UVB and all the stuff that the sun provides. But if you have no choice but to stand by a window, that's better than nothing, right?
Right.
And then same idea at night. Go out and watch the light fade. Like watch a sunset. Just be outside in the evening light. Your body starts recognizing that, okay, the light is now getting dark and we're going to start like winding down. So it starts to like set that like theme for your evening into like moving into sleep. What can totally screw that up is how we live our lives with bright lights and screens, and like all the lights on in your house at night are really hard. Lights should be really, really dim at night. That's one thing that like my family struggles with. We, we'll have like Netflix on, or like the kitchen light will be really bright. And I've been trying to like push, dim lights and turning lights off. And I think that's one of the areas where my sleep hygiene can improve essentially. And then at night, no light. Like no light. So sleeping with MTV on when I was a kid.
Not an option.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Not an option. Well, first of all, it's not an option because MTV is not around anymore, right? Or maybe it is, and I
don't know what
don't watch
MTV
TV.
is
So
yeah, maybe
I don't know why MTV isn't around anymore because it was so great in the 80s.
It was so fun.
It was so good. So yeah, nighttime. So I have blackout curtains in my room. Nights when I'm traveling and I'm not home, I have an eye mask. I literally block out every light. There's no electronics in my room. If my daughter leaves the light on in the hallway and there's light coming through the crack in the door, it's so bright, and it just seems so bright in my dark room. So I like put a towel on the, so I really try to minimize everything. I close my bathroom door in my bedroom. There's no light coming in. It is so relaxing. So I have learned to embrace the darkness for sleep. It's really, really nice. And ideally, you don't want to be looking at your phone in the middle of the night. You don't want to be looking at any sort of light will start to stimulate us. Right. So light is a big part of sleep. Another big part is temperature. So our bodies need to cool off to sleep. So you want your room cooler.
Right.
And our bodies warm up when we wake up.
Yeah, I wake up hot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think for women, a lot of times, like the change, we can be more warm at night or in general. I need to sleep like really cool. Yeah. So I have the luxury of having AC. I keep it at like 66. I mean, if in a perfect world, I'd sleep in like 55, 60. That's kind of like my perfect place, and I'm not sleeping like without blankets, right? Like I want blankets to cuddle in and be warm and make that coziness. That's the nice thing about
sleeping cool, because I want to have all the things. I have like the pillow between my legs and the pillow underneath my arms and the blanket, and I just want to feel that like embrace.
Yes, exactly. But you also want to like open it up if you get too hot.
Right, exactly, and that's the thing.
And here's the other thing. For temperature control, you have this particular type of skin on your hands, on the palms of your hands, the soles of your feet, and your face, like particularly like the forehead, eye area. I'm going to butcher the name of the cells. It's like, I'm not even gonna go there. You have these special type of cells on your skin, on your hands, your feet, and your face, and they have an extra capability to regulate your body temperature. So like, when you stick your feet out from underneath the covers at night, that's better to cool you than actually taking all the covers off your whole body.
This is something I actually do naturally.
Yeah, right.
Because it's also easier.
Well, but you have to be careful because sometimes the creature from under the bed might come out and grab your toes.
Or the aliens.
Or like, I have this fear of sticking my hand out of my blanket at night and someone grabbing my hand.
Oh my God.
Could you imagine? I'd shit myself.
This is crazy.
Isn't that crazy? That's where my mind goes at night in the darkness.
Okay, so
and this
that is where your mind goes.
And this is like childhood like trauma at nighttime sleeping stuff that's like, creeping its ugly head up. So I have to work through that.
Interesting.
So I don't like my hands being out. I still haven't. I have not gone through the exposure therapy of like just putting it out there.
Wow. Yeah. That is so interesting. The thoughts that circulate in my head are more, I don't want to say intellectual, but more like real life stuff, like not, like the,
Yeah.
not real life stuff. I don't think that's the right word because
No,
like,
I have that too.
Like somebody could grab your hand. That's a real life stuff too. But like something that has, to do with, a certain situation or a
Yes.
certain person in my life. Those are definitely for me always the things that even as a child or a teenager or later in college have kept me up awake, like conversations I had
Yeah,
or
yep.
anger I'm feeling towards somebody and like
Yep.
how I would tell them off or,
Yeah.
it's
It's always really good at 4
it's
a.m.,
always
right?
so
And
great
you're
at
like,
4
damn,
a.m.
why
You're
didn't I
just
think of
like,
that?
why did I not tell this person that,
Yeah.
and, or a client of Pat does who was pissing us off or something like this, where you're just like, why didn't we say this differently? And then my mind, it's like, yeah, you were saying the executor. So at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., whatever, the executor's out of the office.
Yeah, and I got this from Matthew Walker. So Matthew Walker is this like renowned sleep specialist from Berkeley, and he wrote a book. I don't remember the name of it. This is where like the geriatric comes in here. I think it's like Why We Sleep or How We Sleep or something like that. He's on tons of podcasts. Andrew Huberman, he's on Rich Roll, he's on probably on Tim Ferriss. He's like the guy that comes on the sleep podcast. So
I love it.
just
I
keep
have
it
to listen
in
to
mind
that.
for
Yes,
down the
I
road.
will definitely have
But
to check
he has
that out.
He has he talks about a lot of things that I was just talking about. And I'm pretty sure this is where I remember hearing this from, but it's like nighttime, your brain that during the day when you're awake and doing things, like there's just, you can kind of think of it as like you have this executor of the business, and your brain is the business, and then at nighttime, like the executor is like gone. It's like beer 30 for the executor. They like left the
The
building.
mice are like dancing on the table.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause the cat is
I don't
out
know
of
what
the
kind of
house.
business you're running with mice and stuff, but like whatever analogy works for your,
This is
yes.
a German thing.
If the
'cause, like, when
cat's
the cat
away, the
leaves,
mice will play.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
the same thing
So
here.
your cat's gone.
Yeah,
like
and the
he's like,
executor's
screw this.
also
I'm
gone,
going to
yes.
that house because it's got like better AC or something. Yeah, and your brain is just left to like do whatever the hell it wants. It's like any anxiety you have. I mean, this is for me for sure. It's like tenfold, just like exaggerated, right?
Yeah, it feels like amplified.
Yeah. And I have, I was talking about the night terrors of like something grabbing my hand or being abducted by aliens, right? There's like two type of like night terrors. Like sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be scared by a dream or a noise or something, and I go into this like we were talking about this earlier. You go into this like the loud sound, right, that you had, right? You go into this fear space of like, what was that? I think it was thunder, but maybe it was a motorcycle, or maybe it was like a dinosaur. I don't know. Your brain is like, what? You're just trying to like grasp. You're like half asleep,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's one type of thing the things that keep me up at night. The other thing is reality. It's
Right.
like stress. It's wow, I said this thing at work. I hope people didn't take it the wrong way, or like, oh, maybe this, or like, oh my God, I have to do my taxes, and like, oh wait, my daughter has this stuff for school I have to do, and like, oh, I have to do this project for work, and I have to do, and it just keeps going and going. And those situations, I'm at the point in my life of lifetime of insomnia where I can actually recognize that I'm in the monkey mind. I'm there, and it's like the anxiety bowl, right? We talked about this in the past. You have this anxiety bowl. It's this empty bowl, and then you fill it with something. And the bowl's always there. The anxiety, whatever you put in the bowl, the subject matter can change. But the problem is not the subject matter. The problem is the bowl itself, right?
Right.
And at nighttime, often with PMS, this is where that gets really bad. I get really overwhelmed, and I'll have these racing thoughts at night, and you're just like, and I will literally think to myself, like, you, like, shut up. Like, stop, dude, stop doing this. You're not going to solve any problems. I have to tell that to myself in the middle of the night. Sometimes I even tell myself to go back to sleep. I'm just like, just go to sleep. And those are nights where the insomnia is pretty rough, and there's not a whole lot I can do. It's black as black can be in my room, and whether or not, sometimes I put on white noise for sound. I don't do that at home usually. I usually do that when I'm traveling, like in a hotel or something, so I don't hear noises. I find that not hearing the noises, like hearing the loud booms or whatnot, or trying to drown it out with background noise is more helpful than dead silence for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
where we are living right now, we have a swamp cooler. It's really loud, but I use earplugs so I don't hear it as loudly, and I still feel like it helps kind of drown out everything else that's
It's
going
soothing.
on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's soothing.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely something to be said about white noise. You know, I asked my therapist once about the waking up at like 3 a.m. and you know, I just asked him like, does this happen to you? And like, what do you do? And you know, he was very honest and open about it. And he just said like, yeah, I mean, bring it back to the senses, like feel the covers, you
Yep.
know, feel your breath, you know, definitely your thoughts are going to be racing. You're not going to stop them. Nobody can stop them,
Yep.
but like feel the covers, take a deep breath. Like how cozy is it? Make it a little cozier. And just kind of remember, just like you said, step away from the thoughts. Like try to see them
Yep.
from a distance, disengage, detach, which
Yep.
is so much easier fucking said than done.
Oh yeah, they pull you right back in.
They're just
You're like,
no,
oh, my
no.
covers are
I'm
so
gonna
soft.
punch
Oh
this
shit,
person.
what did I have to do at work tomorrow?
No, and
you
I
know?
know. And the worst thing for me is when it's something that I haven't written down on one of my millions of lists, then I'm like, oh no, do I need to turn the light on
yes.
to now write this thing down because then I'm going to be even more awake. But then if I don't want to write it down, I have to like replay it in my head enough to where I won't forget it. And oftentimes I will wake up remembering that one thing.
You're like creating like a brain memo.
Oh
You're like,
my
hold on,
God,
I got to
yes.
write this in the brain memo. Oh
Yes.
wait, did I write it? No, I got to write it again. Hold on, I got to write. Yeah. And then you drive yourself crazy with that. My
Yeah.
husband's the same way. He says, because we talk about sleep often. He's a really bad sleeper. I'm a really bad sleeper. Put us together. You know, I wake him up, he wakes me up. It's just, it's hard. But he has real nighttime anxiety too. But he also says many times he remembers things that he forgot to do during the day or things he needs to do the next day. And
Absolutely.
like they're hugely helpful for him to remember. It's crazy. It's like we're in this hypervigilant state in the middle of the night, for better or for worse, right? But then what do you do with the information? If it's really important, sure, it's great to have maybe a notepad to write it down, but then you got to turn the light on. Otherwise, you're like writing upside down, right?
I think my mom said that she once, because she struggles with the same thing, had like this huge piece of paper with like a huge like pen that was like for kids, so that she could try to write down in the dark, just like on this thing, kind of like more or less like what it was, so that she
How'd
wouldn't
that work out
forget.
for her? She had like stick figures and stuff on there.
Yeah,
Like, oh
absolutely.
my God.
But maybe some of them reminded her. I don't know.
That's so funny.
I actually
Well,
never followed up.
Maybe like a voice memo. I mean, that's not great if you have a partner
Yeah,
you're sleeping
especially
with.
the person next door is trying
You're
to
like,
sleep.
Make sure to call Sally in the morning. And they're like, what? Make sure to call Sally in the morning. Nothing. Like, go back to sleep. And then they're awake. And then you're awake. And then you're
And
arguing.
then they're taking voice memos.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe not. Maybe scratch that idea.
Scratch the voice memo unless you're single.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the sleeping together thing, I just struggle with. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much I love a person, and how intimate we are. I just struggle sleeping with another person, and I'm noticing that more and more, and I'm owning it more and more, and I'm realizing, you know, we're so advanced in so many ways in this society. Like we're talking about sleep hygiene and all these scientists and, you know, natural remedies and medicine, and nobody freaking talks about separate beds or separate bedrooms because it's so shunned upon. Like, oh, are you not
Yeah.
having sex? Do you not want to be married? It's like, no, actually your sex is better when I'm not sleeping next to the person that fucking pisses me off because they're rolling over every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, because now I'm psyched to see them. But it's like so shunned upon. And, you know, in Germany, actually, I don't know if it's still common, but when I lived there, the marriage beds were one mattress but cut in the middle. Like, so the actual mattresses didn't really touch. There was even a board in
So
between.
you just like hop over the crack to
yeah,
like make
pretty
Nicky.
much. Little hanky panky.
Hanky
You knock on the door.
Over the crack, hanky panky. Hey baby, can I come over and hanky pank over
Well,
there? My bed's a little hot.
See, here's the problem, because then you have less hanky panky space, you know,
Yeah.
because the mattress is so little. So
Yeah.
I personally think in my world, and I can't make it happen because there's just not enough space in a house, because I don't live in a house. I live in a van.
I'm pretty sure
Currently.
there's like there's a
go-
market for this like hanky panky in small spaces. It sounds like there might be a market in Europe for this, where you could have like, you know how IKEA has like revolutionized the market for small spaces?
Yeah.
You could revolutionize the market
Hanky space.
for hanky panky in small spaces.
Yeah, I need to contact IKEA. We have to call IKEA.
I don't know if IKEA, they just do like furniture and shit. I mean, I guess that if you're into that, you know.
Oh my god. So I'm like, okay, going back to my ideal. My ideal situation would be 2 separate rooms, completely separate rooms.
Yeah.
Also because of sleep patterns.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody has a work project and
Totally.
goes to bed at 2 a.m. and the other person's like, I'm so tired and I know I'm going to sleep well. I'm going to go to bed now that I'm tired at 9 p.m.
Yep.
You
Alpine
know?
starts.
Oh, yeah, Alpine starts or, and so you go into that room and you have a big space. So you have like, maybe not a king size, but a queen size for yourself. The other person has a queen size for themselves. And now you've increased the panky space also.
But the distance between the spaces is larger. You have to walk.
Well,
you can't just hop over the
that's
crack.
True. But I think that, honestly, sex rarely happens like in the middle of the night for me. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
it's more of a thing where, you'll make those decisions and find which room,
Yeah.
when the time comes.
Yeah.
Because I feel like really what it comes down to is that sleep is so freaking important.
It is.
And it is like the more people I talk to, friends and mentors and, fellow athletes, sleep is so important.
Yeah.
I was talking to Emily about this. She basically was talking to one of her medical advisors or doctors, and the person said, if you're on a big wall and you can't sleep, even if you're laying down resting, you're resting, like your body's recuperating.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful for me to hear because when I was thinking about it, like, okay, so yes, I could get up super duper early and make coffee, or like, yes, I could go up and do something or, watch something. But just this idea of like, if I just stay put, if I just lay down and relax, I'm still resting.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like something that I feel like has helped me also to like try to relax, kind of like what you were saying, go back to sleep.
Yep.
Go back to sleep.
Yep.
Like make yourself rest.
Yep.
And let those thoughts and remember those thoughts are crazy right now and just let them go and don't hold on and don't fight them and don't get up
Yeah.
out of bed.
Yeah. I think there's, I think I've definitely heard other people do the opposite or say the opposite, but I don't think I agree with it. Some people will be like, if you can't sleep, don't stay in bed because then your body associates not being able to sleep with being in bed. But then you get up and then what do? You meditate, I suppose. If you sat up and meditated in the dark, I think that would be one thing. But if you get up and you start exposing yourself to light, then you're awake.
Right. And that's the worry that I would have as soon as I'm awake and there's a light on that I feel like
Yeah.
I have a hard time like winding back down.
Yeah.
Maybe changing the place. Like that's one thing that I heard is like,
Yeah.
like sometimes in my old apartment, I would like get out of bed because I'm also rolling around knowing that I'm just keeping Pata awake. So I would like leave, but not turn any bright lights on, just dim lights and go to the sofa and maybe like read something, but not on the phone, but on a book or in a book. And then just kind of like slowly but surely get tired again in a different place.
Or wake up in the morning and have coffee and then fall back asleep, which apparently is a thing for you.
That is the thing for me. When I sleep poorly,
crazy.
I literally wake up in the morning, have coffee, and then I get tired and I want to go back to sleep.
Yeah. That's
it's the weirdest thing.
That never works for me. It's like as soon as I'm awake.
Somebody told me about coffee naps once, like even in the middle of the day.
Coffee naps.
Like you drink coffee, you pass out super hard, but then you wake up and the coffee kicks in and you're wide awake.
Oh, so you got to time it so like before the coffee gets metabolized.
There's a time there that you're just like, you're so tired, you crash.
Yeah.
But the coffee is like slowly in there going daka 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 daka, and then eventually
and then it's like a cooking timer, bing, and you're awake. That's good.
I think
my dad is a big fan of power naps. He used to
I love them.
I know power naps are good. My understanding of naps is that you got to keep them short. If the power nap's like less than 20 minutes.
Yeah,
It's
my
like
power
10
naps
minutes.
sometimes turn into 1 hour.
Those are long distance power naps. Those are not power naps are short little things. Those are like those are hard. Those are like ultra power naps. That's hilarious.
God. I know for some reason there's something with me between 40 minutes and 60 minutes. Like for some reason the 20 or 15 or something like
Doesn't
that.
work.
No, I don't know.
Do you get groggy after them?
I just don't wake up.
But when you do wake up, are you groggy? Are you like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Now I'm not going to sleep the rest of the night?
Yeah,
Or-
I think I never wake up at that time. Like literally, if I take a nap and I don't set an alarm, I never wake up before at least 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, but then I will for sure wake up before 1 hour is over.
Yeah.
Like 100%. I'll either sleep 30, 40, 45 minutes, 50 maybe.
And do you feel good?
And then I usually feel good. In the summer, if it's hot, I like to take a cold shower because you feel kind of like,
Yeah.
groggy also from the heat.
Yep.
I think in the winter, that's not so much a thing. In the winter, I actually don't really nap because I go to bed at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Our
street lights are on.
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, the light has been off for 3 hours. I'm going to bed.
That's
Fuck
right.
this. But like, no, summertime, especially with this heat in Colorado, I mean, I feel like in Grand Junction even more so, naps are the way to go.
Yeah.
I can't get through a day, especially because I sleep like shit during the night. And I told Petra the other day, actually, I feel like my sleep during the nap is better than at night. I might just like nap all the time.
Yay. Whatever
And just
works.
like switch it up. There was a famous president in America that had a crazy sleeping pattern.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
I don't do history.
He slept, I don't know how many hours on and then how many hours off.
Yeah.
and-
There's definitely people who do that, and whatever works for people works, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's been a lot more evidence as of late of like just how incredibly important it is to get a significant amount of hours of sleep. Like folks who do like 4 hours of sleep a night and like can function, but like it's not really healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea of having one big chunk at night.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny because I was listening to these other podcasts, and one of the things I remember hearing was considering 6 or 7 hours as a good amount of sleep during night. 6 or 7, or obviously if you're lucky 8. I mean, I know people who can sleep 10.
Yeah.
That doesn't ever happen to me.
No, me neither.
I mean, 7 or 8 for me is already great, but like he was saying, like even 6 hours, and that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
And then if you supplement that in the summer with naps, I think.
With an ultra nap.
Yeah, the ultra, the ultra nap. Okay, so let's talk about something else that I wanted to bring up about thoughts, not just at night, but the dark thoughts. Because one thing you and I talked about the other day is the fucked up thoughts that come to mind sometimes, where you're like, wow, I can't believe I just had that thought. Then in talking to you, like I was aware of the fact, or I thought, for example, that other people would have maybe similar thoughts, but I was always scared to voice them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were saying you were riding your bike down South Boulder Road,
Yeah.
and you were thinking, what was the dark thought that, like, what if a car hit me and
Yeah.
splashed me all over the place?
Yeah. I don't know if splash is a very gentle term for what
Yeah.
might actually happen, but and we talked about this. These are called intrusive thoughts.
And I didn't even know that. I
It's a
didn't know they're
thing.
called intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bummer because now what was actually a beautiful bike ride, a lot of that time you have spent time with this dark thought. Like
Yeah.
right now that what was a beautiful summer day or, sunset, knowing that Pata's out there paragliding could have been completely carefree. But
Right.
this one dark thought kept coming back and be like, Pata's going to crash,
Right.
And it's like, I just want to free myself of that,
Yeah.
But
Well-
it's the same thing. It's like, how do you do that when they're just like happening?
Well, I mean, the question is like, what do you do with it? Like I think probably the best thing to do is recognize it for what it is, right? Which is easy, of course, easier said than done, especially if you've never talked about it with anybody else.
And like, don't know that other
Right.
people have them.
But like, even if you have your own reaction to it, you're like, wow, that's really fucked up. Why did I just, when I was younger, I remember being in like a stadium in bleachers, and I would have the thought of like, what if I just stood up and I did like a handstand or a cartwheel on the top of these bleachers, down the bleachers. And I'd be like, oh my God, that would, like, I'd really hurt myself. That would, why would anyone do that? Like, why would I even think that? And that's an intrusive thought.
Right. They're like out of control. My cousin, what he always said to me was, when I was driving my dad's Jeep in Montana, he's like, "What if I?" And I was going like 65 down, the highway. He's like, "What if I just like put the shift into park as you're going 65? What would happen?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, everything would explode. Please don't do that. Like, why are you
Right.
having this thought? But that's another one of those intrusive
Yeah.
thoughts. Like, they're kind of violent too.
Yeah, and I think I mean, at least for me, my experience is that I'm just like, oh, what the heck? Like, where did that come from? You're just kind of like, sometimes it's laughable, like the thought that you have that will be so irrational and out, all over the top that it's like you can actually laugh at yourself. Those are, I think, probably the easier ones.
The easier ones because
right?
they're so out there.
But the ones about like our partners, having these thoughts of like, oh, what if this and what if that, and like. I had a friend recently come over and stay with us, and she went on our trail run, and I didn't know how long she was going. I didn't know till like after the fact that she was training for a marathon, and she was gone for hours. And I'm like, oh my God. And I actually texted my other friend. I was just like, oh my God, is this normal? Does she like, and she was like, oh, she's training for a marathon. I was like, oh, okay. And like, I started to get worried, I mean, those are, I think veering on less intrusive and more like, you're just worried about someone, right? And so I feel like there's a gradient there, but I guess it's the amount maybe that you're having them, or like, Pata's is good at paragliding. I know my partner's really good at climbing, and like the likelihood of something happen would be a freak accident kind of thing, and like they go out hundreds of times, right? And we have this thought every single time they go: is it like, am I wasting my energy and putting that? In doing something with the thought, right? Like I can have the thought, but I think it's also really important to, I mean, it's being aware that you're not your thoughts.
We used to share all the like self-help books, every one that was on the shelf, like all the spiritual books. Both of us read, Eckhart Tolle's first book, The Power of Now, which was like revolutionary. And like for me, at least, like the beginning of this like whole path and journey. And Eckhart Tolle is somebody that came back into my life because I started listening to the teachings of Eckhart Tolle with Oprah on Spotify. It's the series about, a new earth, but it's like it always comes back to the same thing. All we have is the present moment. We are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions. We have to practice detachment, to observe the thoughts, to be present with the feelings and the sensations, and to sort of distance ourselves. And the power of now, meaning our mind is so often preoccupied with the future and the past and what somebody says, and the fear, so much fear of like, what if I don't get this job? What if I should get a new job? What if I should do this? And what if this person is going to say that? And basically the teachings, I feel like, always come back to this, like, everything is about now. So then, if we think about these dark thoughts, aside from the intrusive thoughts, even thoughts that are about like our real life, our day-to-day life, detaching ourselves from our thoughts, detaching ourselves from these identities that we have built about who we are and our roles as a mother and a coworker and this and that and the other. But we're so much more than that. We are actually what lies beyond it. And this sounds so crazy, but when you're in it, it makes sense. But then when you're having these moments of like compulsive thinking and fear, it's so hard, even though all these teachings resonate so deeply, in that moment to really detach from those thoughts, to really detach from those identities that anchor us into this like physical world, which is constantly changing and is not going to last. And yet I feel like so much of our suffering and that compulsive thinking and fearing about our status, if we're doing things well enough or we're successful enough, all these things go back to something so unimportant and so not us, not our essence.
No, I mean, that's the practice though, right? Like, that's the practice. It's like, what is this saying is, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a weekend with your parent-in-laws. Yes. and then see how enlightened you are, right? I mean, before enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood and carried water. Like, the work is always there, right? And becoming the observer is a great first step. But like, if you become the observer and you're yet all angry and pissed off, and you act on those feelings, then you're not necessarily like doing, following your path, right? And so that's the practice, I think, is sure, I can go sit by a river and meditate and be all zen, do yoga in the sunshine, but then like, when I got to deal with somebody else's crap, or I got to, you got to be zen in that moment. That's where your practice comes in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And when you listen to Eckhart Tolle talk, and Oprah asks him, like, Eckhart, do you not have any problems? And he's like, I have challenges. He says, I have challenges. I don't have problems because you make problems.
Yeah.
The challenge is there, and how I deal with it is my choice.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, well, how do you react?
Yeah.
And
your perspective, right?
The perspective of it.
Like
Exactly.
you can see yourself as the victim of this, right? Or you can own where you are, own the situation. And it's just kind of like, okay, well, now what, right? And what do you do with it? This comes up, and you have this emotion, or you have deep-seated shit that comes up, and maybe you can't recognize it in that moment, but like still, it's like, what do you do with that? And that's the practice. And gratitude, I think practicing gratitude is hugely helpful.
Yeah, that's such a big one.
Not that it helps in the moment sometimes if you don't have your shit together, but like.
But it does if you can get yourself to think about it, though.
Yeah.
Like if you can be in it. It's so funny that you say this, Susan. I love that because it was something that had come up in my mind before this episode recording. One of the methods to deal with negative thinking for me has become gratitude, is redirecting my thoughts.
Yes.
It's redirecting my thoughts. And it made me think about this type of therapy that I've heard is really good. I've never tried it. It's called something cognitive behavioral therapy, I think.
Yeah,
Basically, it's
cognitive behavioral therapy
it's
is
like
sort of
reconstructing your thoughts, sort of.
Yeah, it's a very large type, like it's kind of like a big umbrella type of therapy, and it's all about changing your behavior. It's like it teaches you how to redirect your whatever's going on for you, to redirect that, and then how that affects your behavior.
Yeah.
So you are within that therapy trying to change actual behaviors.
So one of my anxieties that I suffer from is anxiety in grocery stores. For many different reasons. I have a hard time with crowded places. I have a hard time with a lot of choices. I get overwhelmed with like
Same
35
here. Have we not talked about this?
Yeah, I know.
I fucking hate big grocery stores.
I know. We
like
have
King
talked about
Soopers,
this. I know. It's
forget
the worst.
it.
I know.
I'm like, I can't even. Like, I get so overwhelmed. I get my groceries fucking delivered. I know.
I have literally
First
walked
world
out of a
problems.
grocery store with an entire cart full because I couldn't handle it. The public shootings have increased my anxiety about being in grocery stores a lot. Like, for some reason, public shootings for me have...
I think about it every time I walk in a grocery store now.
Literally.
Well, that's the world we live in now.
But yeah, I was going through this grocery store in Grand Junction and basically feeling anxious. And I redirected my thought to gratitude. I was like, Isabel, you are so blessed and so privileged to be walking through this grocery store with all these options and money to buy groceries, even when groceries are really fucking expensive, to go home and feed yourself.
Yeah.
Like, this is a luxury, and I feel like something shifted. So I love the fact that you brought up gratitude, because that has become one of my methods.
Yeah. Yeah. Gratitude and even the words you use. Like, I have to do this thing. No, I get to do this thing.
Right.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, it's that shift in perspective. And gratitude is a huge help, I think, and something that people should practice every day, of just like anything. I mean, there's a Native American tradition where they would wake up and like be grateful for the day, because you don't know if you have another one. You know what I mean? And like, it's a really beautiful thing to think about that. But we just get so lost in the mundane, like, craziness of our worlds that we don't practice these things. And that's the work. That's where the work comes in.
Right.
It's just like day to day, making those recognitions of the words I use, the perspective I look at the world, the perspective I look at myself, like how I use, what are the thoughts that I have about myself in terms of like self-love versus not. Like, can I be more gentler with myself? Because if I could be more gentler with myself, I could be more gentler outward. Right.
So in the movie The Alpinist, Marc-Andre talks about fear. And, he's doing these like really sketchy free solos in terrible conditions. And I remember how he said, I can either let fear take over in these moments or I can leave it. If I don't have the fear, I climb well. I am calmer.
Yeah.
And I really had to think about that. It's like just in everyday life. If you don't feel the fear, if you don't feel the angst, if you don't feel the anxiety, that pressure, and you are present and you are kind to yourself and others and you are present, everything does work out better. It just does. And you do the thing well.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing about fear though is that it doesn't just go away.
Right.
It's what you do with it.
Exactly.
And that's what I think he was getting at there.
The thoughts, right? It's
yeah.
the same idea.
They're intrusive, fearful thoughts.
Right.
Right. And so it's how you interpret it and how you act on it. Right. And so again, it's like, it comes back to being the observer. It's like, oh, here's this like kind of crazy, fearful thought that I'm having. It's like you can get all attached to it and all wrapped up in it, and it's not really going to serve you to do that.
Yeah.
Or you can be like, you know what? I'm just going to like put that aside.
Yeah.
And just be here right now in the moment
and breathe.
use your senses. Yeah. Breathe.
Yeah. And I was going to say, because you talked about gratitude, for me, breath is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, I've been really digging yoga again for the first time in a long time, where I'm actually, since COVID, so for the last 3 years, I think the first time I'm doing in-person classes.
Tell me how many times you've walked out of a yoga class and be like, God damn it, I wish I hadn't done that.
I know. Same with climbing or getting together
or
with a friend or walking
or,
down the street with your dog.
Exactly.
What are the things that you feel like keep you sane? Actual practices that right now are helping you not run yourself into the ground, because speaking of, your back is kind of messed up right now.
Well, I kind of fucked my back up because I ran myself into the ground and I did too much.
Let's talk about the back thing.
Well, let me go back to your original question.
Right.
There's a couple of things. Number one is exercise.
Yes.
Right? Like I'm a doer, and for better or for worse, right? And you're a doer. You understand, you know? And I sometimes can be a very linear thinker. Sometimes spirituality is not front and center. And when I become the doer and I do all these things and I'm not connected to myself, that's usually when I get into trouble. I can reconnect by exercising. I can reconnect by connecting with a friend. I'm not a super social person, so that's not my number one go-to. And I have very close people, very few of them. And when I do connect with them, it's usually always good. My partner and I make time for each other twice a day, every day. We wake up in the morning and we have a coffee session together. Like, even if one of us has to get up at 6 a.m. to go climbing, we'll often, I'll get up at 5 and just to have coffee with him for 20 minutes.
It's a ceremony.
It is. It really is. It's a sacred time for us.
I love that.
And, from a relationship standpoint, it's really important for us to stay connected that way. And then we do the same thing at night. We'll have... I'll have a beer and he'll have a glass of wine. We'll have some chips. We call it chips and salsa hour. We have a little tray. It's like a thing. And actually, his dad would do that. We would go and visit his dad in Maine and we'd have wine with him and he'd bring out a tray and we knew that we had to be there by 5:30. Even if we went climbing, we had to be back by 5:30 so we could have wine and it was a thing.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, so it's we have this this routine, this ceremonious sacred time, and that's a big part of keeping me connected to him. Because we're both doing our thing all through the day, whether or not we're exercising together or apart or climbing together or apart or whatever we're doing. We both work from home, so we're around each other a lot. But you also have to set those boundaries of I just can't just walk into his office and start talking to him because I'm interrupting his flow, right? And he can't do the same for me because he's interrupting my flow. So even though, you're well, you could see him all day long. And yes, I do see him all day long, but the reality is we can't really connect during that work
everybody's
time.
Still on their own agenda.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have those times, but it's definitely an area of my life that I need to work on. Clearly, here I am. Here I am with my 4 pillows bolstering my back because I did too much.
In my van here, sitting in the rain, which is very cozy, and I hope that your back gets better really quickly, and I know what it feels like. I've definitely been there with
Yep.
back seizure, back out, going out. And you were just telling me all the things that you were doing
Yes.
right before your back went out. And I was like, wait, was there a rest day in there? Like you were
No.
like, and then I trained here, and then I climbed that,
Yeah.
and then I ran here, and then I did that. And then I picked up one weight at the training center, and like my back went out.
Yeah. I mean, it was my body. It was the universe saying like, hey, guess what time it is? Time for you to take a break, whether you like it or not.
Oh my God,
you know,
I've
and
so
the
been
reality
there.
was like, I actually couldn't take a break at first. Like I panicked and I was like, okay, I went through like all the stages of grief. I did. First of all, I was in denial. Right. I thought about all the things that I could have done differently. What is that? Bargaining?
Bargaining. What are the
What
other
are the
stages?
other ones?
know
I don't
you're
even
not
know.
talking about these
The
with
denial
our-
one is always a big
Yes.
one for me. So I was in
Which
denial.
one? The denial.
Denial,
one?
yeah.
Mhm.
Acceptance. I eventually got to acceptance, right? But like sadness,
Anger was
anger,
there.
yeah, anger
Yeah,
was there.
anger.
And I still that's still coming. It came up today. Like I was crying the first like day or so. You know, like
Yeah.
I was just like, okay. First, I was like, when it happened, I was like, oh, I'll be fine in 40. Give me 48 hours, I'll be fine. You know, and 48 hours came and went, and I wasn't fine.
Right.
And my back was. I couldn't even bend over and tie my goddamn shoes. You know,
It's
like
so
I couldn't put
humbling.
my paints on.
It's so humbling.
It's
and you
so
have to
humbling.
pee, and like they're like holding you, and
I'm
you
like,
know, oh
I can't
God.
like roll. I mean, it made my sleep terrible because I had so much pain. Every time I
Right.
turned my body, I would be in pain. So I did not sleep well, which didn't help my recovery, right? Because I'm not recovering from the injury.
Exactly.
But the first 3 days, I did everything I could. I was the doer. I became the doer. You know, I went and I got a massage that first night because I'm like, oh, it just happened. Like my friend Yuki had a massage appointment open up. Like somebody canceled, and I was like, I'll take it. And it was like literally like the same or the next day. It was the next day. And so like I did yoga. I haven't been doing yoga, so which is probably not a good thing to start it when you have a back injury, just FYI. But you know, I used to be a yoga instructor, so I know all this. I know all the poses. I know all the things. And I'm like, okay, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do that. I did my yoga, and then I like stretched and I foam rolled and I rolled with a ball and I put on CBD oil and I put on comfrey oil and I took ibuprofen and I like massaged with a gun and I massaged with a back massager and I massaged with like a fucking spoon, you know, like I just threw everything at my body. And I was supposed to climb on Friday and Sunday of last weekend, and you know, in preparation for this trip that I'm going on in a week, which I'm supposed to be climbing for like, 10 days or something. And I just was just like, I will not accept this. I will not accept this. And then finally, it was like the day before I was supposed to go climbing, and I just texted my friend. I was just like, hey, like I can't even put my shoes on. I'm not climbing anything, I can't even climb out of bed. Right. So finally, and then it was like, all of a sudden it was this, my back like felt better.
I know, it's like
acceptance.
the mental acceptance
Yes.
is so, it's kind of the same thing with the thoughts.
Yes.
The intrusive thoughts, the dark thoughts, or whatever, the fear and all the things that we have going on. Like, it's the moment that you let yourself just be like, wow, this is happening.
Yep.
It is certainly not comfortable, and I would absolutely prefer something else. However, this is what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to allow it and give it space. I'm going to embrace it as if it was my baby, which is so counterintuitive.
Yep.
And absolutely what needs to happen.
Right, exactly. And so finally then at that point in time, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to listen to the universe, because I just,
Oh my God, I'm so proud of
then
you.
it's 3 p.m. on a gorgeous Saturday in Boulder in the summertime. And I'm like, I'm going to lay on the couch and turn on the TV. And I'm like,
my God,
whenever
yes.
in the
I
world, in the
know.
time and place and space, am I watching anything on a screen during the day on a weekend,
That
you know
you
what I
have
mean?
off
That I
and
have
it's
off.
beautiful outside.
And there's nobody around. Like Ryan was
I know.
climbing and Anna was gone. And, it's just like,
It takes that kind of situation to make you do that, though.
Yeah,
like
it
if
does.
you have crazy fever and whatever, COVID, something, and you end up in bed and that's all you can do, that's what you're going to do. But it takes that for doers like us
Yep.
to get to that point to be like, I'm going to chill out. And I was going to say, one of the thoughts I had when you were talking to me about all the things you were doing,
Yeah.
like I was doing the massage, I was doing the yoga, I was doing the exercise, the ball and the everything, the creams. I was like, these are the things that your body has been wanting for weeks.
yeah.
And it's been like, you know what? Fuck you. It's too late now,
Yeah.
baby.
So
You can throw all the things at me. And in fact, I've heard something about back seizures in particular that actually, if it's really bad, don't have a massage because
Yeah.
just like let the muscles relax
Yeah.
because they're in spasm. They're kind of freaking out just as we're freaking out. And so everybody's freaking out and your
Yeah, but
body.
that doesn't work when I'm in denial. I mean,
Yes,
I'm like, I'm
exactly.
going to go have this massage and it's going to fix me and I'm going to go climbing tomorrow and it's going to
Right.
be great, you know? So, yeah. But the beauty of it was a couple of things came out of it. First of all, I recognized that, okay, I've been going at like, 1,000 miles an hour and this is the result of this and I need to find more balance, right? Secondly, I was like kind of cruising, looking at some stuff on YouTube and there was this documentary and you should watch it.
I would love to watch
It's called
it.
Finding Joe.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, and it's kind of low budget, but basically it talks about the teachings of Joseph Campbell, who was this philosopher from, I don't know, the 30s, 40s, 50s kind of time. And he basically compared all of these different religions and myths and stuff and found the common theme, which was the hero's journey is the common theme. And they kind of detailed out all of these movies like Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And like they talk about how the hero's journey is like this, you're in this like reality of whatever your reality is. And something happens that like breaks the reality. And it's either like a divorce or like a financial issue, you lose your job or whatever. And it like shocks you out of where you are. Like Star Wars, like Luke Skywalker's whole family gets killed. Right. And it like shocks him into this like alternate reality that he's now in. And then the journey begins.
Right. That's
the
when
journey-
everything falls away and you're just stripped naked.
You have to deal with your shit.
Yeah.
Or like, become a Jedi, whichever comes first.
Like the essence of you is like
Yes.
like coming through. All the bullshit that's like layered on top just falls away.
Yeah, and you just have to like deal with you, right? And then so it's the break from the reality, it's the hero's journey, and then it's the return home. So like you go through this life-changing event, you deal with your shit in whatever form that is for you, and then you come back with this experience and you bring it back to your community in some way, whether that's just like returning home to your people or it's like teaching or it's just like a new way of living. There's some way that you return kind of home back to where you were, but you're in a better place or a different place, right? And it was really, really cool documentary. And I watched it again with my partner, but I started watching it and I was like, I never would have watched this or found this because it was just a random, sometimes YouTube puts on like random videos.
Yeah,
I don't even know
it's
why.
all serendipity because like I feel like for you to have come to that point where you were sitting there at that moment and for
3
the
p.m.
YouTube
on
to
a
spit that out
Saturday.
at you, it's like for me it's not a coincidence. I'm sorry, I'm way too. Yes, I'm German and I'm very like type A and like that like. I don't know what you want to call it, rational, but I really do believe in these moments where something happens and you're just like, you know what, even if that's the one reason or one of the main reasons I threw my back out, thank God I found this movie, there's the gratitude.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and so I continue to let myself be open to these things, right?
Nice.
Another thing that I've been thinking about doing, which is also a good like kind of coping skill for stress and anxiety and stuff, is journaling.
Yes.
Right. And I've been like, I'm going to journal. And like, I used to love to write and I've always wanted to write a book and I never have. And I kind of gave it up and I've just been doing my, whatever medicine thing and just doing my day to day. And so because my back was injured, I was sitting in my daughter's bedroom. She decided she was going to rearrange her bedroom and take out all the furniture. We were going to paint it and stuff. And I was like, well, the first thing you got to do is clean this room up. And so that took her like an entire day to do that because she's all, she's 11 years old. And every time she picked up something, she'd be like, woo, this, and like just go off into a tangent about it. And I got this from so-and-so's birthday and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, we're never going to get this room clean. But I'm like, I don't really care because my back's out. I can't even pick things up off the carpet. So I'm like just sitting there, just air trafficking controlling, right? And so she has this journal and she's like, hey, do you want this? It's empty. Like it's got my name in the first.
Oh my God, are you kidding
me?
No. She gave you her journal?
She's like, I'm like, okay, sure. And so she gave me her journal.
That.
And so
I love that.
Last night I wrote in the journal for the first time in
I love that.
way
that is
too long.
So beautiful.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That is so beautiful, Susan, because I feel like journals always come in these weird ways.
Yeah.
Like I actually needed a new journal and my friend, I just told her and my friend Kat, we happened to be in her van and she's like, you know what? I have this journal that I wanted to give my friend. I never saw her, but I'm not going to use it. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was like glittery. And I don't know. It was just like in that moment, I was like, this is what it had, these like butterflies on it. And I just, for some reason, I feel like journals have this, that your daughter, I love the fact that your daughter comes to you and says, Mom, do you want this journal?
Yeah.
That is just freaking brilliant.
Yeah, it was very cool. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to do this. And so I started journaling, and I'm trying to make it a practice to do it every day.
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens. Usually my journals are like, I have like 3 pages filled out, and then like years go by, but I got to change that.
To it. You have to change it. And even if, for me, it's kind of like the in and out with meditation, journaling,
Right.
yoga, all the things. But I'm noticing the gaps are smaller.
Yeah, and and you started this section of the conversation about, oh, like you get all these things done, and I'm so like envious of you, or whatever word you used, and
Admire you.
admire
or like,
me. That's it.
admire,
That's it.
yes.
Admire me. And the reality is that sometimes one of those things that I don't do is self-care, and that goes out the window because I prioritize other things. And yeah, I mean, that's huge, and I have to practice doing that, and practice gratitude, and practice journaling, and just touching base back with myself, because all this doing doesn't necessarily do me any good. Yeah, sure, maybe it like helps my job, and it helps my kid, and it helps my husband, and like my house is cleaner or whatever, but like the reality is like it's not really tapping into me and my
Right.
happiness, and I think it's also a little bit of a distraction to not being spiritual, not like connecting, and I'm definitely finding there's a lack of that, like so much so that I'm like thinking about, do I want to keep doing what I'm doing for work? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we've talked about this in the past. I've never not had a job out of graduate
I was
school.
about to say that was one of the things that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Like you said that to me the other day. Since you have come straight out of school, you've never not
I
worked.
took 2 6-week sabbaticals, and that's the entire time of my time away from professional work.
That is incredible.
I'm a physician assistant, and right now I have a really sweet job, and I work in telemedicine. I've been working in telemedicine for a long time, and I work from home, and I have a really pretty damn good work-life balance. I make good money. I work with great people. An outsider looking in could be like, wow, you have it all.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Which is another thing that happens with the mind.
Yes.
Just a little side note, like what we don't have.
Yeah, the grass is always greener.
The grass is always greener. This
Yeah.
person has it all. Like she has this and a family and a thing and the
Right.
perfect job.
Right. And why should I take the step out of my comfort zone and do something different? And yeah, I mean, I think my reality is like, what am I doing with my life? Like,
Right.
why do I have this job where I work 40 hours a week on the computer, which is hard on my body? That's part of this equation of back pain, right?
Yep.
Like I'm working hard and I'm trying to stand as much as I can, but you can't stand for 8 hours, and I had a treadmill thing and it didn't work. I couldn't like type and walk at the same time. I tried all the things. I've been in telemedicine for 13 years. But the reality is like, there's got to be more to life than this. And I feel like I'm in the hamster wheel a little bit, where it's like, oh, I'm working 40 hours a week so I can pay my mortgage, so I can buy things. And then like, but really like, I don't really need much other than just my basic needs being met. And my basic
Right.
needs are so far from being met. And I was talking about this with my husband this morning, and we're actually talking about it. Like maybe we start aiming towards like me not working,
That would
and
be incredible.
the thing is, I don't want to
love
go to
that.
another job.
Right.
I
right,
want
but
to
just like
leave.
simplifying.
I just want to leave
simplifying.
to have space.
Yes.
To figure
yes.
out what I want to do next, because I don't have the space to do that now. I don't have time to think about it. I don't have. I mean, I'm sure I could make more time, but at the expense of other things, right? It's hard to be just going. It's like I really do. I have a routine. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I work out. I drink my coffee with my husband. I work out for 2 hours at least, almost every single day, and I go to work. I start work at 10 o'clock and I finish work at 6 o'clock. And then I have my part-time with my partner again. And then it's like dinner time and time with my kid. And like, where's the time for me?
Right.
It's not there.
It's not there. And then you're like, what is this life about?
Right.
You start thinking, and it's so interesting that you say this because I've had other friends. I feel like there is, and maybe it is COVID related, and this whole world, what's going on in this world, like so many aspects of it, economically, politically,
Right.
I mean, socially, collectively, like there's collective fear. But I've been hearing these words, like reevaluating, and I'm in it. I'm like, I am tired of running my head against the wall to try and get gigs.
Yeah, you're doing the hustle.
And I'm doing the thing. I'm selling the Ascendance bus. This is the first public announcement, by the way. I'm selling the Ascendance bus.
This might not be recorded and released into the world.
Yeah, I know, until it's actually posted, which I'll probably post it tomorrow. But yeah, I've been putting that off. But it's been on the back burner, like, oh, what do I do? Should I do it? Should I not? The fear is real. I identify as this company and this bus, and like now we're doing this, and it's scary, and I don't know what's next, but I just know that I need to make space for something more, something else, because there is more to life. Like you were saying, it resonates so deeply.
Yeah, and I think I've run into this issue of just like, well, I have to know what I'm going to do next. Like I have to know. I can't go from plan A to plan B without knowing what plan B is.
But without that phase of transition, you can't know, because you can't have it come into your life, just like those moments of like insight or that documentary that flows into your computer, without giving it space, without letting that moment and that thing arise.
Right. And I also think I've been looking at it from the wrong perspective of just like, what can I do to make money to support myself? If I'm not doing this thing to make money to support myself and my family, what can I do to make money support? Like, and it's like,
what if it's not about the fucking money?
Exactly. Like, how about you support what you love and what you want your life to be about? And in one of the documentaries, because I watched another one last night too, which was a shorter one, somebody said, like, what do you do where you lose yourself for hours? Like, if you think about something that you love and something you want to do, like, what comes to mind? What activity? Like, you're just out there and you're just like hours and hours and hours and go by and you don't even know.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like, can you tap into what that is for you? Right?
Absolutely.
You know, and like, yeah, sure, I could be like, oh, climbing, but maybe, you know, I'm 44 years old and being a professional climber, that ship might have sailed.
But also,
maybe not, I don't know.
But also there's so much more to that than just being a climber. There's a philosophy, there's like the connection with nature, there's teachings, there's history, there's a whole background of it, like where it could take you. And there's more than that. I mean, you also love art, and you also used to be an incredible yoga instructor. You love spirituality. You chant beautifully. I remember that about your yoga classes. I see you as like a bright light full of all sorts of interests and like, you know, potential, or just like, you know, inspiration. So I feel like, again, giving something new space means letting go of something else.
Yeah. I was sitting in my hot tub and, you know, at the end of my very spiritually open day, which hasn't happened in a decade apparently. And I was listening to the crickets and just like really being present, and they sounded like a heartbeat. Like it's almost like they were in unison.
Yeah, it gets so intense.
It's very intense, and it just feels like you're in this like breathing, living organism of the world, and it was very cool. And I'd never made that connection to the crickets being like the heartbeat of the earth, and it was like, whoa.
I know.
Did I just have like an edible or something?
Yeah.
But it was really nice. And it was like, those are the things where, you know, doing, and you don't see those things.
What is something that you would say to us 27-year-olds back in those days?
I would say to follow your heart and not chase things that society tells you are going to make you happy.
I love that
because
so much.
You can have the big house and all the fancy clothes and the nice car and the mortgage payment, and you know, that doesn't mean you're happy.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, sure, you're stable and that's great and whatever, but there's so much more to life than that.
Yeah.
And simplify, you know, practice minimalism, which is something I'd love to do. That's a whole nother podcast.
It is.
And a whole nother practice, right?
Yep.
And something that I'd like to work towards, and
I hear you
all
on
these
that.
things.
I hear you on that. I think one thing that I would add is it doesn't matter what other people think.
Yeah, right. Tell that to a 20-something-year-old.
Good luck.
You know,
just gonna have to
now
go through
40-year-old us, we're like, oh, back in the day, it doesn't matter what people think. And you're like, whatever, mom.
Right. You have to
Right?
go through it. You just have to go through all the things but I'm grateful. I'm so grateful again, the gratitude for this conversation and the growth that we have gone through and the growth that we will go through, because I know it's just never going to stop.
Yeah.
And these conversations, this kind of honesty, these kind of, reflections are what is going to help us, because we get to connect and remember we're not alone.
Right. Totally.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for this.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.
I love you.
Love you too.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And please feel free to send questions, comments, and topics you would like to hear about to Isabel at kegelsandcoffee.com. That is ISABEL at kegelsandcoffee.com, or you can find me on Instagram under Kegels and Coffee. Take good care, stay tuned, and remember, when in doubt, drink coffee or do Kegels.